Alright everyone, welcome back to week 4 part 2 where we are going to draw our very first I think we are just going to draw with our very first heat map first, and then I will make another videos for how to draw the bubble plots by using tables. Alright, let's go step by step in the slides. Now first of all, we need to understand about what heat map is, right? So basically what heat map is, let me just try. What heat map is basically there is a tables, right? There is a table like this. I'll just show. There is a table like this, which each of the tables, each of the boxes, right, or each of the grid do have values, and the color of the values are different. The density of color of the values are different based on how much that value is. So meaning that in here, right, we have a certain or a different opacity of colors depending on the value of discount based on subcategories. All right, so this is the thing that we are going to make the very first things, right? Now in order to create this thing, right, by using Tableau, I want you to actually start by just like open your Tableau as usual. I think we'll just start with a new fresh Tableau. I'll just like delete this one, delete. I'll just like open new Tableau here. All right, so the data set that we are going to use is we are going to use retail underscore sales.csv, right? So where to get the retail underscore sales.csv is you can just simply go etm5950.rahmatroom.my, right, and go to this data set again and download this retail sales data set. Alright, so once you download, right, it's going to be in your download folder, or depending on where you actually place or store it by default. Alright, so in my case, it is actually in my download folder. Alright, now let's go back to the tables. Okay, so this is my tables. Alright, so the very first thing is we wanted to load the data. If you guys still remember how to load the data, basically we just click this data source, and then I'll just like open text file, and then I'll just like use retail underscore sales.csv. Alright, so we have this data. Alright, now go to the sheet 1. Alright, let's start with our drawing of canvas, where we are going to draw our very first heat map, right? Okay, so let's go to the slides. In here we have two x and y axis. This one is x axis and this one is y axis. So what we are going to draw, we are going to choose two variables first. In my cases, right, I'm going to choose subcategory for here, which is for row because this one is row, right? You can see this one is each of the row. And for this one, for columns, I'm not going to choose this discount band for my Tableau, but I'm going to choose something like most probably store ID, right? So we have a few number of store, I think 8 number of stores, so it's going to be 8 times how many subcategories that I have, right? Now in my case, because I wanted to do about store ID and subcategory, and at the same time I wanted to find the sales in Australian dollar, right? What should I do is let's do step by step first. Let me put subcategory in row first. All right, now it become like this, which is in this row we have subcategories, right? And I want store ID into in my columns, so it's going to become something like this. So as I mentioned previously, I wanted it to be, this one is my subcategory and this one is my store ID, right? So this is what it looks like. Now the third variables that I want is basically I wanted it to try to display or visualize my sales Australian dollar, right, in the shape of sum. So the third things that I need to do is basically I can just put this sales AUD, right, in label here. Then right now what do I get is I get something like this. All right, now how about if I wanted to make heat map, meaning that each of this one do have a different colors? In order to do that, right, we need to understand the colors are different in terms of opacity, meaning that the higher the sales, the higher the sum of the sales in AUD, the darker it is, and the lower the sales, the sum of sales in AUD, the lighter it is. So the way how can we do that is basically we just put sales AUD over here into colors, and this is what we will get, which is technically similar with this heat map, right? So the step is pretty much simple. The very first thing is you just choose whatever variables that you want. In my case, I want the x and y axis to be subcategory, sorry, and my y to be store ID, right? My y to be store ID, and each of the data inside here, I want it to be sum sales AUD. Alright, so in that case, that's why the very first two things, right? If you notice over here, the very first two things is I put store ID and subcategory first, so that it create the columns and row first. And then whenever I have this one, then only when I have this two things, right, which is the columns and row, then only I put the third variable, which is sales AUD inside label and sales AUD inside color, and then only it becomes the darker it is, the higher sales in Australian dollar. It is pretty much straightforward, right? So that is how we do heat map. So I think that's it. But most of the time people will just like remove this label, because this one is clearer already, because we do not want to know the exact value for heat map normally, but we wanted to see which one is the highest one between for a certain attributes between two variables. In this case, we know laptops at store 1 have a higher sales AUD compared to the other items, or even this one. Actually, I think this one is even higher, laptop at ST07, store 07. Yeah, so that is how we do heat map. Alright, thank you so much. See you in the next video. We are going to learn about how can we draw a bubble plot. Bubble plot, is it? Or bubble chart. Thank you so much. Bye bye.